God bless, clearly wearing author, butterfly shadow under the moon copywriting. This is probably a modern male travel to the Qing dynasty and become the seventh son of Kangxi. This is probably the story of how the seventh elder brother Yunyu worked hard and fell in love by the way. Therefore, there is no doubt that this article is ambiguous, and it is easy to guess who the pairing is. For the details of the predicted story, please see the breakdown in the text. Content tags: traveling through time and space, clearing the court marquee, the proud son of heaven. Search keywords: protagonist, Yunyu Yinzhen supporting role, Yinhu Kangxi, etc. Others: Qing Chuan Jinjiang Gold Medal Editor Evaluation. Li Yu, a 30-year-old uncle, traveled to the Qing dynasty and became the lame seventh prince of the Qing dynasty, Ixinzhou Luo Yunyu. When he was young and met the fourth son of the Emperor Yinzhen for the first time, then she stretched out her white and tender little hand to him, with a bright smile on her face. Yinzhen also loves this younger brother very much, and since then he has become a frequent visitor to the South Third Institute. The two who grew up together practiced riding and archery together, and went on business trips to handle cases together, and a special affection quietly sprouted in their hearts. What will be the final destination of the royal family's emotions, and can this forbidden love come to an end? The themes of April 4 and Little 7 are no longer new. What shines is how to put new wine in old bottles to give people new ideas. Yunyu looks immature and cute, but in fact, in order to protect himself and his status as a concubine, he obediently called AMA, and greeted the Empress Dowager obediently. Yinzhen took good care of him everywhere, taught him to write and sent him to his favorite Maoan, who gently lifted him up from the horse, and wiped off the dirt on his face. A trace of warmth flowed in the hearts of the two of them. This article takes us from a court full of turmoil and intrigue to a warm and loving palace, which is impressive. In the winter of Kangxi's 20th year, heavy snow fell in the Forbidden City. Due to the complete pacification of the San Francisco Rebellion, Kangxi has been in a good mood recently, and even the entire harem is full of festive and peaceful atmosphere. In this peaceful atmosphere, a child who is not more than 1 year old is lying on the soft couch, looking at a brass incense burner in the room in a daze. It is just such a small ball, and it looks ridiculous like that. Li Yu himself didn't want to put on such a ridiculous appearance, but anyone who slept soundly on a big soft bed and woke up as a 1-year-old child would be shocked, confused, and helpless. Glancing at Nanny Zhong who was napping next to him, Li Yu frowned slightly. He had been here for 2 days, and he didn't know anything except that this was the Qing dynasty and that he was the 7th elder brother. According to the little historical knowledge he knew in his previous life, in the history of the Qing dynasty, there was no elder brother who was ranked 7th and was very capable. There was none. Arching the soft couch, Li Yu looked at his slightly deformed left foot, but he knew which one was the elder brother who was born with a foot disease in the history of the Qing dynasty. That was the 7th son of Emperor Kangxi, Ixinzhou Luo Yunyu. This person didn't make much achievements in his life, and because of his foot disease, he didn't even have the qualifications to inherit the great lineage. There is also a mother who is not favored. In the history of the Qing dynasty, there is really not much left for future generations to write. Li Yu thought with some emotion that apart from the 9 sons who seized the heir apparent, Kangxi actually also had a worthless guy like him who didn't make much achievements. Grabbing the quilt covering his body, Li Yu accepted his fate a little. In his previous life, his parents died early, so this life can be regarded as picked up. In the future, as long as he doesn't anger the crown prince, stay away from the 8th elder brother, and treat the 4th elder brother respectfully, he will be fine. Can live a lifetime in peace. In December of the 20th year of Kangxi, Kangxi advocated vaccination, and the young brothers in the palace also vaccinated according to Kangxi's wishes. Then came the Laba festival, and then the annual New Year's Eve banquet. And on this day, Yunyu met his biological mother, Dai Jie, as his concubine. He was carried by Nanny Zhong to Cheng concubine's room, and was soon transferred to Cheng concubine's arms. When he opened his eyes, Cheng concubine was only about 20 years old, with a very pretty face, but in the harem, it's really not that brilliant. Concubine Cheng carefully checked the clothes on Yunyu's body, and saw that there was nothing illegal, and they were also thick, so she asked the maid beside her to wrap Yunyu in a thick robe, and handed it to Nanny Zhong who was waiting. Look carefully at elder brother Diankai, the princes of all the palace masters will be here today, so don't make any mistakes. Hey, Nanny Zhong also understands the difficulty of the master. The seventh elder brother was born with foot disease, although there is nothing serious about it, and it will not affect walking and doing errands in the future, but among the few princes born in recent years, he is really not outstanding. In addition, the master is not favored, so in this harem, one must be more careful, absolutely not to offend the master of any palace. Concubine Cheng lives in Qixiang Palace, which is still some distance away from Jianqing Palace where the New Year's Eve banquet is held. Because Yunyu is young, she has been protected in the arms of the mother, and it feels like she has been away for a long time. After arriving at Jianqing Palace, Yunyu was not with concubine Cheng, but was carried to the side hall by the nanny, and entered a wing room. Yunyu felt that the room was warm, but it was a pity that most of his face was covered by the robe. I can't really see what's in the house. Slave send greetings to third elder brother, fourth elder brother, and fifth elder brother. Good luck to elder brothers. Sensing that the person holding him seemed to curtsy, Yunyu moved in the mother's arms, but he was a little curious. These elder brothers should still be children now, and they don't know what they look like. Is the seventh brother in your arms? Only a soft and creepy voice could be heard, show me. Immediately, Yunyu felt his face turned cold, and the corner of the robe that was originally covering his face was removed, and he saw a ruddy child with thick eyebrows and big eyes, but he was quite upright. It looks so cute. The child took off a sachet from his body and shook it in front of Yunyu, teasingly said, "Come on, seventh brother, call third brother, this sachet is for you." Yunyu glanced at the exquisite purse, and guessed that it might contain snacks or gadgets that children love to eat. Although he was a little curious about what the princes of the Qing dynasty played when they were young, but thinking of the tragic end of this third elder brother, Yunyu thought, I put out my curiosity, and I didn't want to attract the master's attention too much, so I just hummed twice and didn't respond much. The third elder brother Yinzi teased for a while, seeing that the white and tender Yunyu was really dull and boring. He was only 4 years old and lost interest in teasing. He threw his purse to the little behind Nanny Zhong, and sat down while teasing the fifth elder brother Yinkai, who is more than 2 years old. Seeing that Yunzi didn't plan to pay any attention to him, Yunyu heaved a sigh of relief, twisted his uncomfortable body, turned his head to one side, and saw a little boy staring at him in the corner. This child looks pink and tender, really cute. Yunyu blinked his eyes, but his mind began to gallop. This is Emperor Yongzheng, and this is his future backer. Is he pleasing or pleasing? Seventh elder brother, this is fourth elder brother, Mammy said in Yunyu's ear when she saw Yunyu staring at Yinzhen, then took a step towards Yinzhen's side, and knelt down to let Yinzhen see Yunyu clearly. The fourth elder brother Yinzhen is now raised under the name of the imperial concubine, and his status is naturally noble among the princes. How could Nanny Zhong dare to be negligent? Yinzhen's face was tense. He was only over 3 years old. Even though he had an elder brother's demeanor on his face, there was still a bit of curiosity about this seventh brother in his eyes. Just when Yinzhen was in a daze, the child dressed like a bun stretched out a hand to him, with a bright smile on his face, giggle. He didn't know if the child was laughing or calling him brother, but Yinzhen was mostly distracted by the little white hand, and he reached out to hold the little hand. My servant greets all elder brothers. The emperor has a decree to invite some elder brothers to attend the table. A little walked in and slapped 1,000, with some snowflake particles on his shoulders. Hearing Huang Ama's call, Yinzhen withdrew his hand, glanced at Yunyu who was still smiling, walked behind the third elder brother, and followed out the door silently. Yunyu didn't care, he still had a smile on his face, until Nanny Zhong put his hand into the robe, walked through several corridors, and came to Jianqing Palace. then she put away the smile and put on a naive look appearance. Because of his foot disease, he will not be the target of calculations by the women in the harem and the princes. But also because of foot disease, if he wants to not be treated coldly in the harem, he must be loved by the superiors. He didn't want to live a life like an ascetic monk, but he didn't want to calculate too much either. This slightly flawed body gave him a unique condition. Even in the history of the Qing dynasty, the fate of the seventh elder brother was much better than those of the princes after the failure of Zhulang to win the heir. Nanny Zhong hugged Yunyu and came forward to greet Kangxi and the Empress Dowager. Kangxi was not enthusiastic about this son who was born with a disease, so he rewarded a pair of jade ruyas and said nothing more. On the contrary, the Empress Dowager felt a little eager for this great-grandson whom she had never met, and ordered Nanny Zhong to come forward to have a look. Yunyu looked at this elderly woman who hugged herself into her arms. Although the years of wind and frost had left marks on her face, it was not difficult to see that this historically famous Empress Dowager Xiaozhuang was also a beauty. He tried his best to stretch out his short arm from the robe, and giggled at the Empress Dowager. New Year's Eve is a festive day, and with the pacification of the San Francisco, the Empress Dowager was happy in her heart, but now she smiled when she saw Yunyu, and Yunyu was already good-looking, so the Empress Dowager was aroused by Yunyu's smiling face. Great, Emperor, look at our little Yunyu, this little face looks like a boy who invites blessings when he smiles. After saying that, she asked Sumela, who was beside her, to take a long lock and hang it on Yunyu's neck with her own hands. Superior. That's not it. Seeing this situation, Aunt Sumela was also happy to make the Empress Dowager happy. Look at me, this seventh elder brother is a blessed one. Sitting on the concubine's table, concubine Cheng was already extremely nervous when she saw Yunyu being held in the arms of the Empress Dowager, but now seeing the Empress Dowager showing love for Yunyu, she was both scared and happy. I didn't know what to do for a while. Seeing this, the other concubines at the same table also praised Yunyu one after another, as if they were determined to forget that Yunyu had a leg problem. Regardless of whether these boastings were sincere or false, concubine Cheng felt that there was a son in this deep palace. Is her good fortune? She was not favored at first, and her natal family was not a big nobleman. Even if she gave birth to a healthy child, that position was beyond her imagination. Now that Yunyu is ill, she feels a little relieved. When Kangxi saw that the Empress Dowager loved Yunyu, he couldn't help being curious, and asked Li Dequan to hold Yunyu in front of him, but he didn't receive Yunyu in his arms, and just looked at him twice. Seeing that the child had clear eyebrows, full forehead and a smile that looked a bit like that of a lucky boy in a New Year picture, he smiled and said, "Well, very good. Come, I will give you 2 pairs of gold earrings with pearls in your hand. A pair of gold bracelets." When concubine Cheng heard the gift from the Holy Majesty, she hurriedly knelt down to thank her. Her cautious appearance made the concubines who were still somewhat wary of her suddenly lose interest. Seeing that Yunyu laughed even more, Kangxi stretched out his fingers to poke Yunyu's tender face. "Look at this kid, you can tell that I rewarded his mother-in-law," and he smiled so happily. "Tell me, I rewarded you. Mother-in-law, do you have anything for me?" Yunyu was secretly startled. Did Kangxi mean to tease the children when he said this, or did he mean something? Although these words may not be addressed to him, but in this case, it would be bad if he acted too conspicuously, but if he didn't respond, I'm afraid Kangxi would be unhappy. Yunyu is just a child now, and he is not afraid that he will really anger Kangxi, so he reached out and grabbed the corner of the sleeve of Kangxi's dragon robe, and then pretended to be a child stammering, "Fang. Ama." Hearing Yunyu call himself Huang Ama, Kangxi's heart felt a little warm, and he hugged Yunyu from Li Dequan's hand with a smile. "It's not Fang Ama, it's Huang Ama." Ama. When Kangxi hugged Yunyu, Yunyu grabbed a piece of snack from the table and held it in his hands. With a smile on his face, he happily put the snack into Kangxi's broad palm. "Ama." The small hand made Kangxi's palm wider and wider, Kangxi was stunned for a moment, then smiled, "This is Yunyu's gift to me, give me something from me." Yunyu still just smiled innocently. Kangxi also knew that such a big child didn't know this, so he teased for a while, handed the child to Li Dequan, and asked the palace people who took care of Yunyu to watch Brother Qi carefully, and then chatted with the Empress Dowager again. After being carried down, Yunyu fell into a deep sleep because of the sleepiness of children. Afterwards, there was another period of quiet life. Later, on New Year's Eve 2 years later, he was rewarded by Kangxi. Although he was not much in the limelight, he would not let the people in the harem look down upon him. Therefore, Yunyu's life in the past few years has been quite nourishing. The only pity is that he rarely saw Kangxi's sons in the past 2 years. Sooner or later, we will see each other. Yunyu is practicing good-looking walking posture in the room, while planning his future life in his heart. What should a 3-year-old child look like on a daily basis? Yunyu didn't know, he just felt that the nuns, maids, and eunuchs around him treated him with care, as if he would fall if he was not careful. Fortunately, he was already a 30-year-old adult in his previous life, and there were no other naughty children. He practiced the simplest calligraphy with a brush every day, or wandered around the palace, so as not to cause trouble to these court ladies and eunuchs. Not too boring either. He is only more than 3 years old now, and he is not worried that seeing the concubines will cause trouble in the palace, and the concubines here are not like in TV dramas, they just run to the imperial garden or some lotus pond casually, and the concubines' over 6 years old brothers are all dragged away for education, where you often meet big shots. Last winter, concubine Cheng moved to the west wing of Yanghe Palace, so today Yunyu dressed neatly as before, and brought Fuduo, the who usually served her, to Yanghe Palace to pay her respects. Now there is no seat in Yanghe Palace, but there is also the favored concubine de concubine who is at the same level as Cheng concubine in the palace, who will be the Empress Dowager in the future. So when Yunyu went to Cheng concubine's room, she also saw a woman who was as beautiful as concubine Cheng. A concubine who is a gentle pearl. "Baby, please greet Er Niang, and Er Niang." Yunyu stepped forward to salute Jian respectfully. The etiquette was very good, and his face was full of respect. "Hey, this child, why are you so polite? Get up, get up," Debbie sighed secretly when she saw that Yunyu, who was only over 3 years old, saluted without any mistakes. God loves it. Thinking of this, she smiled all over her face, let Yunyu walk in front of her, stuffed a purse full of snacks for Yunyu, and then smiled and said to concubine Cheng, "Sister, Yunyu looks so cute, sister, I really like it." Although concubine Da is more favored than concubine Cheng, she was promoted later than concubine Cheng, who was conferred upon her first entry into the palace, so it is not an exaggeration to call her a sister. Although Cheng concubine is not smart, she is also a transparent woman. Hearing the concubine's boast, she only showed a slight smile on her face, and nodded Yunyu's head. "What's so good about this child? If he has the wisdom of the 6th elder brother, I will thank the Bodhisattva." Debbie just laughed when she heard it. She was resentful in her heart. The first child she gave birth had to be carried by another woman because of her low status. Now that child saw her, she just slapped her indifferently. 1,000, not even half a look. Now because of the emperor's love and affection, she is fortunate to have Yunzhou under her. Yunzhou has always been smart, but it's a pity that she is thin. If something happens to her, what should she do? She knew that concubine Cheng was a law-abiding person. Even when elder brother Qi was sent to Nansan Institute, concubine Cheng's face was calm. Most of the children born to low-ranking concubines were adopted by other palace masters, but this 7th elder brother was sent to Nansan III. I don't know whether it was because the 7th elder brother was disabled or the other palace master didn't want to raise it, or the emperor don't have any ulterior motives. No matter what the reason was, concubine Da felt a little sympathetic to concubine Cheng, so much so that she also had a sincere love for Yunyu. In fact, Yunyu's foot disease is not obvious, and his walking posture is almost the same as that of ordinary people, but that is only almost. In this harem, just such a flaw is enough to make him miss the throne forever. An elder brother who is sensible but has no connection with the throne is always pitied and loved by the women in the harem when they are bored. After Dipin stuffed a few more golden melon seeds for Yunyu, she got up and left, leaving the mother and son in the room. Concubine Cheng told Yunyu some things to pay attention to, and asked him about his daily life. Seeing that the child who was only over 3 years old was pretending to be old because he was not favored, Concubine Cheng felt sore, so she justified it. Li Yunyu asked a few more words on the collar of his collar, because everyone in the palace watched every word and deed, so she didn't dare to let Yunyu stay alone with her for a long time, and she looked at Yunyu reluctantly for a few times before letting her go. He is gone. Yunyu left the Yonghe palace, feeling a little warm in his heart. This woman really cared for him, although every time he went to pay his respects, her face was always calm. Walking step by step in the direction of Nanzan Institute with short legs, he never expected to meet the crown prince dressed in bright yellow on the way, and there were a few elder brothers behind him. Yunyu didn't dare to look carefully, so he hurriedly lowered his head to say hello, greetings to the prince brother, greetings to all brothers. The elder brothers were planning to go to the imperial concubine to beg for food today because their master complained of illness, but they would meet this little elder brother who is usually inconspicuous. The prince was only 10 years old at this time. Seeing Yunyu lowered his head, he said, "Raise your head." When the child with his head buried raised his chin, Yunfan realized that this unremarkable 7th younger brother had a good-looking appearance, with a ruddy little face and white eyes, which made people feel heartbroken just looking at him. Shang liked it, so he couldn't help asking, "Where did you come from?" The child might be a little nervous, and lowered his head again to grab the hem of his clothes. "Brother Prince, my brother is going to pay his respects to Emiang." Yunyu was young, and his voice was soft and creepy, like a kitten scratching someone's heart. The prince was overjoyed when he heard that, so he said, "Brother Prince will take you to the imperial concubine's place to eat delicious snacks, will you go?" Imperial concubine. The child tilted his head, his eyes were full of surprise. "Is that the pretty lady?" Seeing the child's appearance, Yunrang teased and asked, "Do you know what good-looking is?" The child seemed to be more courageous, raised his head and said, "It's like the fairy sister painted under the lights on New Year's Eve, very beautiful." After finishing speaking, in order to increase the credibility of this sentence, he firmly nodded his head. The prince laughed again when he saw this, and after making fun of a few words, he asked Yunyu to follow him to Zongqi Palace. He was the prince, so he naturally walked in the front. It was only then that Yunyu saw that the other 2 elder brothers accompanying him were actually the 3rd elder brother and the 4th elder brother. He followed the 3 6-year-old children with great difficulty, but at this time he did not dare to be hugged by the little eunuch, so he had to run hard behind the 3rd elder brother and 4th elder brother. Although I don't know how the prince would somehow let him, a useless person, follow him, but Yunyu dared not make the prince unhappy. After all, the prince is Kangxi's favorite son, and he is still the prince now. Yinzhen turned his head and watched Yunyu stumbled behind him. For some reason, he thought of the vague memory of the time when he was more than 3 years old, the child who was like a bun, the smile on his face, and the stretched out hand. So much so that in the next 2 years or so, every time there was a banquet in the palace, he would look at the child more. Now the child who was asked to be carried by the nanny can run behind him, but he doesn't know, will your feet be uncomfortable? Thinking of this, Yin Zhen stopped in his tracks, and when the child ran to him, he stretched out his hand, with a shy expression on his face. If Yunyu is really just a 3-year-old child, he will definitely feel timid because of Yinzhen's expression, but Yunyu is not really a 3-year-old child, but a 3-year-old Zhengtai's real and 3-year-old child. 18-year-old strange uncle, he could see that the 6-year-old child in front of him was uncomfortable, but his beautiful face was tense, which seemed really cute. Without hesitation, he put his hand on Yinzhen's palm, and then gave Yinzhen a big smile. But Yinzhen blushed because of Yunyu's smile, and turned his head to the side uncomfortably. Even the prince living in the harem, he is only 6 years old at this time, and still has the unique innocence of a child. Yunyu looked at Yunyu's slightly red face, but thought in his heart, even the iron-faced emperors in history were naive at times, at least when he was struggling to walk, it was this child who stretched out his hand to him. When they arrived at Zongqi Palace, after passed the news, Yunyu led Yinzhen into the room of the imperial concubine Tong Jiashi. In history, Tong Jiashi was a beautiful and intelligent woman. Yunyu had seen her several times at the banquet, and she was indeed a beautiful and virtuous woman, but perhaps this was the first time that she was really close to her. When Tong Jiashi saw Yinzhen leading Yunyu in, he was also a little surprised, but seeing the 3-year-old child greet him solemnly, Tong Jiashi was also amused, and took the fresh melons and fruits rewarded by the emperor to him. Several children asked the prince and the third elder brother about some things in life, and then asked Yunyu, who was eating kumquats with his head down, "Seventh elder brother, how is your mother?" Hearing this, Yunyu hurriedly put down the kumquat in his hand, got up and called thousands of times, returned to Tong Erniang, "Erniang is fine, thank you Tong Erniang for your concern." "Okay, sit down." Tong Jia smiled and stuffed 2 more snacks for Yunyu, and said to Yinzhen, who was sitting beside Yunyu, "Si elder brother, you are an elder brother, you must take good care of your younger brother." "Yes, Niang," Yinzhen replied in a childlike voice, and then stuffed the orange in his hand to Yunyu, "I'll eat it for you." He really likes this cute younger brother, so he gave it willingly. Yunyu looked at the oranges in his hand. These things are not rare in modern times, but at this moment, just saying that his mother doesn't have these things, he knows that this is not some kind of cabbage. The peeled orange petals came to Yinzhen's mouth, and he raised his hands high, "Brother, eat." Yunyu's hands are white and tender. There is no problem that children don't like to be clean. White and tender hands are holding oranges that exude sweetness, no matter how cute they look. Moreover, when Yinzhen heard him call himself brother instead of the distant 4th brother, the 6-year-old child immediately felt the responsibility of the elder brother to take care of the younger brother, so the great Yongzheng emperor in history touched Yinzhen like a little adult. "You didn't have a shaved head yet, I won't eat it, you eat it yourself." He knew that concubines who were not of high status didn't have these things, so the 7th brother probably didn't have much chance to eat these things. People who are willing to give up valuable things to themselves must value themselves very much. Thinking of this, Yinzhen fell in love with the 7th brother even more. Yunyu would never have thought that such a small act of flattery would make a 6-year-old boy feel so much sense of responsibility. He just hugged Yinzhen like twisting his thighs, and then put the orange to Yinzhen's mouth. It wasn't until Yinzhen ate the orange that his eyes turned into crescent moons. As a 30-year-old man trying to curry favor with children in such a shameless way, Yunyu was not at all embarrassed, but held high the unshakable banner of following the footsteps of the 4th elder brother, so that he could retire in peace and stability in his later years, instead of being tossing life is worse than death. Because the Emperor Yongzheng in history was really not bigm'd, it is true that friendship should start from a baby. Information about 7th brother, Ixinjaluo. Yunyu, 16801729, was the 7th son of Emperor Kangxi, the half-brother of Emperor Yongzheng, born to concubine Dai Jie, but was disabled since childhood, had a violent temper and did not form a party. In the 35th year of Kangxi, 1696, he was ordered to lead the camp of the Xianghuang banner, and he was granted the title of Bailor in the 37th year for his meritorious service. In March of the 48th year, 1709, he was granted the title of King of Duoluokun County by Jin dynasty. In October 1957, Yangzhen, the Manchurian capital of the Zhenglان banner, went to the western frontier and was ordered to manage the affairs of the Manchurian, Mongolian, and Han armies of the Zhenglan banner. Since he was appointed, he has fulfilled his duties, completed all tasks, and gradually changed his decadent habits. Therefore, in April of the first year of Yongzheng, 1723, he was granted the title of Prince Heshuo by Jin, still named Chun. Later, the flag affairs were resolved with illness. 8 years later, he died, and his posthumous title was due. Yunyu never thought that there was a White Lotus woman in the harem, so he didn't really think that Tong Jia saw him pitiful and asked Yinzin to take good care of himself. Who is Tong Jiashi? She is Kangxi's cousin, a famous concubine in history. Kangxi may not have love for her, but he must have respect and love for her. Kangxi's attitude towards her is different from other women. And she has no children under her knees, and she has long regarded Yinzin as her own child. A mother always wants to have her own child. Yinzin taking care of other princes may be suspected by Kangxi of being scheming at a young age and forming cliques. But taking care of Yunyu, who has no power in his mother's family and is absolutely impossible to inherit the great rule, will only make Kangxi feel that Yinzin is kind and caring for his younger brother. People in the royal family are always ruthless, but they hope that other people will be affectionate. The psychology of emperors is sometimes so strange. In the Qing dynasty, only 2 meals were used. Yunyu thought somewhat comprehensibly, no wonder the high-ranking concubines in the harem always prepared snacks in the room, isn't it because they are afraid of being hungry? At lunch, Tong Jiashi was seated with several older brothers. She glanced at Yunyu who was sitting next to Yinzin. Although she was only over 3 years old, she was sitting in a well-behaved posture, without any mischievousness of a child. Nodding secretly in my heart, if it's this child, even if Yinzin gets closer to him, it doesn't matter much. No one was talking at the dinner table. Yunyu let the eunuchs around him serve his meal, and occasionally raised his eyes to look at the prince and the others. Although the prince was only 10 years old, his words and deeds carried the unique dignity of the royal family, and his demeanor was elegant. It is pleasing to the eye. There are many records of the wisdom of the crown prince in later generations, but some TV dramas always portray the prince as stupid as a pig. If you think about it, you will know that the prince taught by Kangxi himself cannot be stupid, or even smart. Otherwise, how could Kangxi love this prince for so many years, and even after the prince was abolished, he tried his best to reinstate the prince. The third elder brother also carried his own demeanor, but compared to the prince, he lacked some dignity. Generally speaking, he was also a brilliant character. Glancing at Yinzin beside him, he was only 6 years old, with his back straight, he didn't make any noise when eating, and his expression was very serious, which didn't compromise half of his elder brother's bearing, but for some reason, Yunyu just felt that this kind of Yinzin is kind of cute. Could it be because of Yinzin's pretty face? Yunyu felt sincere contempt for judging people by their appearance. After finishing the meal, Tong Jiashi personally wiped Yinzin's face. The warmth in his eyes was not faked at all. Yunyu stood obediently aside, staring at a big western clock in the room in a daze. The prince talked with Tong Jiashi for a while and then got up to leave. The third elder brother saw that the prince had left, so naturally he had no reason to stay and followed the prince. Seeing that both of them had left, Yunyu naturally couldn't stay in Zongqi Palace, so he got up and called Tong Jiashi, "Tong Erniang, it's time for Yunyu to leave too." Tong Jiashi got up and pulled his hand to sit down, wiped his face with a fragrant handkerchief. "You child, you have no homework, what are you going back to do in a hurry? Ask your fourth brother to take you to the house to play." Seeing the child's round face blushing, Tong Jiashi seemed a little embarrassed, but her eyes were shining brightly. Didn't fourth brother have homework? Obviously wanting to play with Yinzin, but still thinking about his brother's homework, he is indeed a good boy. The smile on Tong Jia's face became more gentle. He turned around and touched the top of Yinzin's head. "Yinzin, go." Yinzin looked at Tong Jiashi, then at the cute children beside him, and took the initiative to hold Yunyu's hand. "Seventh brother, I'll take you to play." Yunyu glanced at his held hand, and the corner of his mouth twitched slightly. "Are good friends holding hands? It's really boring for a 6-year-old child to play with." Yinzhen didn't know what Yunyu was thinking. He led Yunyu into his room, took out a few gadgets that children like, such as glass beads, emerald 9 chains, and piled them all up in front of Yunyu. "These are for you to play with." Yunyu looked at the things on the table, and thought with some emotion, this is the difference between the prince and the prince. In his room, there are only a few glazed beads at most, and there are several pieces of jade carvings among the things of the 4 princes' small animals, opals. In modern times, you can buy several houses in Beijing. Seeing Yunyu not moving for a long time, Yinzhen's tone was a little cautious. "You don't like it?" Yunyu came back to his senses, and hurriedly took out a Julian Huan from it. "Brother, how do you play this? By the way," he attached a smiling face. Yinzhen took Julian Huan, hesitated for a while, and then said, "You want to call me 4th brother, not brother. 7th brother is still too young. If he calls himself brother in front of other brothers, he will definitely offend other brothers." Then Yinzhen saw that the smile on the child's face, who was still happy at first, faded, but he still called 4th brother obediently. Seeing the child standing there awkwardly, Yinzhen, who was only 6 years old, somehow thought of the puppy who was just born, cute and pitiful. "From now on, when it's just the 2 of us, you call me brother, and if there are others, you call me 4th brother." The 6-year-old felt distressed and wanted the child to call him brother, so he teased the child. "Hand, put 2 opals into the child's hand. This is for you, don't be sad." Yunyu put the opal into the small pouch hanging on his body, reached out and hugged Yinzhen's soft body, with a big smile on his face. "Brother." Well, a 6-year-old child is soft when hugged, it's really comfortable, and now the Emperor Yongzheng hasn't advocated frugality. Taking this opportunity, it's not too shameful to get 2 catsi stones by showing off cuteness. "What about elder brother?" Yinzhen also showed a smile on his face. "The 7th brother is so cute, his small body seems to have this milk fragrance, like a white and soft bun." But Yinzhen didn't know that this white and soft bun looked cute, but it was actually stuffed with black sesame seeds. Ming Ruo was ordered by Tongjia to see how the 2 children got along. When she opened the door with a plate of snacks, she saw the 7th elder brother writing something with a brush while the 4th elder brother standing behind 7th brother. He is earnestly guiding. Ming Ruo approached with the snacks, put the snacks on the table and said, "4th elder brother, 7th elder brother, use some snacks." She looked at the table and saw several white papers written crookedly. The word Yinzhen lacks strokes and strokes. If you don't look carefully, you may not be able to tell what it is. Seeing Mingruo, Yinzhen patted Yunyu's head like a grown-up. "7th brother, do you want some snacks?" Yunyu put down the brush and glanced at the sky outside. It should be about midnight now. According to the elder brother's work and rest time in the Qing dynasty, it would be appropriate to have snacks at this time. He raised his head and smiled at Yinzhen, nodded obediently. "I want to eat." He touched his head. At this time he was still young and hadn't shaved his head, and when he was able to go to school, he might have to shave his head half bald up. The aesthetics of the people of the Qing dynasty is really incomprehensible. Half of the head is bare, it is uglier than the whole bald head. Mingruo asked the little waiting outside to fetch water for the 2 elder brothers to wash their hands, and then quietly exited the door. She couldn't help but look back when she went out, just in time to see the 7th elder brother took a piece dim sum, raised his hand high to feed Sich. Seeing this, Ming Ruo withdrew her gaze, with a smile on her face. When Yunyu returned to the South No. 3 Institute, it was almost time to light the lanterns, and he was still holding a Julian Huang given to him by Yinzhen in his hand. The Futuo beside him stuffed some golden melon seeds for the little who was ordered by the imperial concubine to send Yunyu back together. This is also a member of the imperial concubine's palace, how dare they neglect? The did not refuse, said a few auspicious words, gave Yunyu 1,000 blows and returned to Zongqi Palace. Seeing Yunyu's return, the palace lady Yunzu hurriedly asked the people below to wash Yunyu's face and hands, waited for him to sleep, then lightly extinguished the candle and retreated out. Yunyu remembers watching some TV dramas of the Qing dynasty in his previous life, and the maids and eunuchs around his brothers would always make irresponsible remarks. Only now did I realize that slaves, no matter what their master does, they can't ask or look at it. Talkative slaves are not qualified to serve their masters in the harem. Therefore, TV dramas without standards are not good for the development of the audience's IQ. Yunyu turned over on the bed, bowed and held his slightly deformed left foot. There are still more than 20 years before the crown prince is deposed. Went to see Hades. He is not afraid of death, but wants to live more. Whether it is the crown prince, the 4th elder brother, or the 8th elder brother, he will not interfere in the 9th son's seizure of the heir, but he has to make plans for himself and for the concubine. He has occupied the body of the concubine's son, so he has to fulfill the responsibility of being a son of man. Now he can't make his son more expensive than his mother, but after he divides the mansion, he must let his concubine's mother be more precious than his son. This woman who entered the palace as a concubine since she was more than 10 years old was not favored by Kangxi all her life, and she was not promoted to concubine until the 57th year of Kangxi. She entered the palace in the best years of a woman's life, and wasted her life, but she only got an inconspicuous title. Then in this life, even for this woman, he must be an elder brother who Kangxi loves but will not become a thorn in the eyes of all the brothers. Touching the slightly cool back of his feet, Yunyu smiled slightly. In this life, he was very glad that he had a disease on his feet, otherwise many things would not be so simple. In the Zongqi Palace, Yinzhen got up to put away the book after reviewing the homework that will be randomly checked tomorrow. When he picked up the 4 books, he saw the paper pressed under the book. He took it out and looked. Written word. The names of himself and his 7th brother were written messily on it. Looking at the crooked characters, Yin Zhen showed a faint smile on his face, and then folded the crumpled paper and put it in Shanhai Jing in the middle. Yinzhen thought very proudly that when the 7th brother grows up, he must take out this word and laugh at him. In the days that followed, Yinzhen sometimes went to see Yunyu in Nanzan Institute after school, and Yunyu occasionally went to Zongqi Palace to look for Yinzhen. New Year's Eve is approaching, and the Forbidden City has begun to snow heavily. There was a heavy snowfall in the Forbidden City, and Yunyu huddled in the wing room and didn't want to go out. Although the palace has maids and eunuchs to clean the snow every day, for a 3-year-old child, the slippery ground is too easy to fall, and outside the cold wind was piercing, and Yunyu didn't want to suffer that. There is no master in the harem, and the princes in the palace don't have to get up early to greet the queen. In addition, concubine Cheng feels sorry for Yunyu who lives alone in Nanzan at a young age, and doesn't want him to toss around every day, so Yunyu has I haven't been out of Nanzan Institute for 2 days. Thinking of the New Year's Eve banquet tomorrow night, Yunyu didn't know if concubine Cheng had anything to say, so she had to ask Yunzu to wait on her clothes and take Futuo to Yonghe Palace to pay her respects. After going to the Yonghe Palace, concubine Cheng was sewing a leather collar, the size of which should have been sewn for himself. He felt warmed up, went up to Askin and concubine Cheng, talked for a while, and then accepted the hand warmer given by concubine Cheng before leaving go out. After leaving the Yonghe Palace, there was already a layer of snow on the ground. Futuo opened his umbrella and said to Yunyu, 7th elder brother, I will carry you away. Yunyu pulled up the collar of his shirt with one hand, no need. The 3-year-old child said he was not young, and if he was still held by an eunuch, if this behavior was heard by Huang Ama, who would be afraid? And how would this eternal emperor think of him? Stepping on the snow with one foot, there was a creaking sound. Yunyu looked around the white surroundings, and walked very steadily step by step. When I met palace maids and eunuchs along the way, although my attitude towards Yunyu was not in awe, it was respectful. Yunyu also took care of his proper attitude, not showing off, but he would never lower his status. Walking past a withered lotus pond, he faintly heard the cry of a child. Stopping, Yunyu looked towards the rockery beside the lotus pond. Futuo, go and have a look. The only child in the palace who dares to cry in such a place is Gage. Slave greets the eighth elder brother. Futuo's greeting made Yunyu figure out who was behind the rockery, and he stopped immediately when he was about to step forward. He naturally knew what the fate of the eighth elder brother in history would be. At this moment, Yunhu is just a child, and he doesn't want to get involved too much. Niang! Niang! Yunhu cried very quietly, but the 3-year-old child already knew that this kind of thing should not be known to more people. Yunyu glanced at the who hurried over from a distance, and side-tone walked to the rockery, and saw a child lying on the ground pitifully with his face flushed from crying, with a lot of snow on his body. Seeing this, Yunyu had no choice but to pass the hand warmer in his hand to Futuo, bent down and hugged Yunhu from the ground with difficulty, and patted off the snowflake particles on his body, only to find that the clothes on Yunhu's body were soaked through. And his hands were freezing cold. Yunyu frowned, and when he heard footsteps getting closer, he covered Yunhu's mouth that was still calling Miang, and comforted him. Eighth brother, Hui Niang is in the palace, don't you cry, I'll take you to find Hui Niang right now. Yunhu was covered by Yunyu, sobbing but stopped talking about Niang, but looked at this strange boy with wide red eyes, tears still rolling in his eyes. He looked very pitiful. Yunyu took out the handkerchief on his body, wiped Yunhu's face, and stopped talking. At this time, a nun came over with a maid, saw that Yunyu was also present, and hurriedly greeted him. The servant greets the 7th elder brother. It turns out that the 8th elder brother is beside the 7th elder brother, so the slave can rest assured. Yunyu let go of Yunhu, patted the snow on the hem of his clothes on the back of squatting just now, and smiled at the old mother. Just now the 8th brother was clamoring to see Hui Niang. Fortunately you have arrived, otherwise the master would not know what to do. Since you have found the 8th brother, I will go back now. Yunhu's biological mother was not born well, and now he is being fostered under the name of concubine Hui. He is not as lucky as the 4th elder brother. Concubine Hui is pregnant with an eldest son, so it is impossible for Yunhu to be as dedicated to Yunhu as concubine Tong is to Yunzhen. The slaves are all those who see the high and step on the low. Seeing that concubine Hui doesn't care about the 8th elder brother, it's natural that they don't take care of her wholeheartedly. Otherwise, why would the 8th elder brother stay here alone for so long before someone found him? Although Yunyu sympathizes with this child in his heart, he will not do things beyond his power. He is not more than a year older than Yunhu, and not much taller than Yunhu. Standing in front of Yunhu, he really does not have the aura of a big brother. He glanced at Yunhu who buried his head and stopped crying, took the stove from Futuo and handed it to Yunhu, and said with a smile, 8th brother, 7th brother will leave first. The slave sends the 7th brother off respectfully. After Yunyu walked out of the rockery, he walked towards Nanzan Institute without looking back. As for this 8th elder brother, for him, it was just a chance encounter. Handing him a stove is nothing more than an elder's love for the child, and that's all. Seeing that his master was silent, Futuo naturally didn't dare to say anything, but he felt a little strange. The master's attitude towards the 8th elder brother seemed a little strange. Could it be that the two were too close in age so they weren't too close? Back at the South No. 3 Institute, before entering the door, he raised his foot and stomped on the ground vigorously, knocking off a lot of snow particles on his shoes. After entering the room, he suddenly felt much warmer. 7th brother, where have you been? Yunzhen's voice sounded behind him. Yunyu paused, turned around and looked, and it was really Yunzhen in fox fur. He hugged Yunzhen. Brother, I haven't seen you for a long time. Haven't seen you. Yunzhen was knocked back by Yunyu's action, but he still hugged Yunyu carefully, and the unhappiness of waiting for a long time disappeared. I have been listening to the master's lecture in Huizai recently, and Huang Ama only allowed us to. I won't go to class in the next few days. The implication is that I will come to you if I don't go to Weizai today. How could Yunyu not know this? He just wanted to show a child's dependence on his elder brother. After rubbing Yinzhen's tender cheeks, Yunyu let go of Yinzhen, and then said like a good baby, I just went to say hello to Er Niang. Yinzhen looked down at Yunyu's already somewhat wet shoes, which must have been caused by the snow melting. He said to Futuo, what are you doing in a daze? Why don't you bring back those shoes for your master? He pulled Yunyu aside and sat down on a stool. Seeing that Futuo had changed Yunyu's shoes, he said calmly, you dog slave, how do you serve your master? If the seventh younger brother is unwell in the future, you can take it yourself. Fine. Futuo was so frightened that he knelt down on the ground, not daring to breathe. Brother, Futuo is a good slave, I didn't let him carry me away. Yunyu pulled Yinzhen's sleeve, and said to Futuo, Futuo, go and bring the characters in my house to Si brother, look. Hey, Futuo heaved a sigh of relief, knowing that his master was protecting him. He hurriedly called and retreated, and when he closed the door, he heard what his master was saying to the fourth elder brother. Yinzhen took out a few opals from his purse and put them on the table. Seventh brother, this is for you. Yunyu looked at Yinzhen with a serious face, then looked at the opals in front of him, and suddenly felt that there was a kitten scratching somewhere in his conscience. He froze for a moment, then smiled, brother, you have given me a lot, let's keep these for you to play with. It's okay, I don't like these, I'll give it to you. Yinzhen glanced at the opal several times, then grabbed the opal on the table and stuffed it into Yunyu's hand. If you like anything in the future, tell brother, if I get it, I will give it to you. Yunyu blushed and held a few hot opals, and after a long time put the opals in his purse, showing a big smile, thank you brother, I like it very much. The two played for a while. Futuo brought in a few sheets of words written by Yunyu, and Yinzhen took a look at them. Although it was still horrible, people could recognize the words at a glance. He touched them like a little adult. Yunyu's head, I have made progress, very good. Yunyu cooperated and made a look of joy, but he was ashamed in his heart. He was really not good at brush calligraphy, but Kangzi seemed to value his son's calligraphy and painting very much. Yunyu trembled and he still needs to practice calligraphy and painting a lot in the future. Thinking of Yinzhen who was able to write neatly with a calligraphy brush at the age of 6, Yunyu felt that he deserved to be an emperor in the future, but he already knew so many things at the age of 6. In his previous life, when he was 6 years old, he still played bullying girls with mud. At noon Yinzhen stayed at the No. 3 South Institute to eat with Yunyu, and practiced calligraphy with Yunyu for an hour before going out with the little beside him. Holding the stove in his hand, Yinzhen walked out of the South No. 3 Institute before saying in a low voice, you said the 7th elder brother met the 8th elder brother today. The little looked around and said in a low voice, yes. Yinzhen looked down at the patterned hand warmer, what's his attitude towards 8th prince? The little thought for a while, the slave is a little far away, I can't hear what they say, just look at the appearance of the 7th elder brother, and he is quite unfamiliar with the 8th elder brother. Yinzhen remembered Tong Jia's words, a brother treats himself with enthusiasm and treats other brothers with enthusiasm, so this person is nothing worth spending his time thinking about. If this person only treats himself special, then it means that this person may ask for himself, or really rely on himself. Yinzhen remembered that when he met Yunyu outside the Yanghe Palace that day, Yunyu's attitude towards the prince was also very ordinary, but later on he was very clingy to himself. From this point of view, Yunyu is really dependent on himself. Thinking of this, Yinzhen felt that the hand warmer that Yunyu stuffed for him in his hand was extraordinarily warm. He lowered his eyelids, I know, you should do more in the palace in the future, don't let the servants below bully him. The little opened his eyes slightly, then lowered his eyebrows and said sympathetically, I'll save it for you slave. A snowflake fell on the stove, and soon melted and disappeared. In the 23rd year of Kangxi, there were no major events worthy of national celebration, so the New Year's Eve banquet was not very extravagant. After Yunyu brought Fuduo to Jianqing Palace, he consciously followed the servants of Jianqing Palace to lead him to a side room and waited for the Holy Master to call. In the wing room, the elder brother, the third elder brother, the fourth elder brother, and the fifth elder brother have already arrived. Yunyu stepped forward to greet each other one by one, and obediently walked to Yinzhen's side to stand still. The third elder brother didn't like or dislike Yunyu much, and after talking to Yunyu for a few words, he sat alone and talked with the fifth elder brother. Yinzhen pulled Yunyu to sit beside him, touched his hand, and felt that it was warm, so he was relieved. He was afraid that the servants below would not serve him wholeheartedly, and it would be bad if the young Yunyu caught the cold. Fuduo, who was standing with beside the fourth elder brother, twitched his brows when he saw the fourth elder brother's action, and then bowed his head in a proper manner, neither looking nor listening. The relationship between the fourth brother and the seventh brother is really good. The elder brother Yunyi is already 13 years old, and he loves martial arts. He looks tough like a 15-year-old boy. He glanced at Yunyu, and swept away without any trace. He glanced at Yunyu's left foot. Seventh brother's feet are not convenient, we should ask 2 more servants to take care of him. When Yinzhen heard the elder brother's words, he slightly raised his eyelids, and quickly returned to normal, but Yunyu who was sitting next to him still noticed this behavior. However, a child who is only 6 years old, no matter how smart he is, still has some shortcomings. He stood up from the chair and called Yin Yin, "Thank you for your love, brother. The seventh brother just wants to exercise more, so I didn't call him that. There are many servants to serve." Seeing Yunyu's behavior like this, Yin Fei didn't have any interest in talking to him, so he waved his hand to expose the matter. Yinzhen looked at Yunyu who was standing upright, and saw that Yunyu's fair face was indifferent, without any unhappiness. He got up and pulled Yunyu back to sit beside him, leaned over and whispered in Yunyu's ear, "Today I got a new gadget, and I'll come to you tomorrow." Yunyu nodded when he heard the words, and made what a child should expect, "Then fourth brother, you must remember to come to me." It was just a conversation between 2 children, and the elder brother was not interested in listening to it. Thinking of the prince accompanying the dragon to the banquet, as the eldest son, he was somewhat envious and jealous, so he didn't put much thought into the other brothers. Body. 8th brother is here. The arrival of the 8th elder brother Yinhu did not arouse much reaction from the elder brothers in the room. Yunyu looked at the elder brother, and seeing his expressionless face, he knew that the elder brother didn't care about this elder brother who was raised by him. The 8th brother under his name. 8th brother, please greet elder brother, 3rd brother, 4th brother, 5th brother, and 7th brother. Yinhu saluted respectfully, her voice was soft, but cute. It's a pity that the elder brothers responded indifferently, and they didn't seem to take this 8th brother seriously. When Yunyu paid his respects, at least these elder brothers exchanged a few pleasantries, but the 8th elder brother did not even greet them. Yunyu glanced at the 8th elder brother who was standing alone in the middle of the room, and then at the 4th elder brother who was sitting beside him. After all, he just smiled at the 8th elder brother and said, "It's snowing outside and the road is not easy, the 8th elder brother sit down." He said no more. The 8th elder brother glanced at Yunyu, chose a lower seat to sit down, looked up at all the elder brothers in the room, and finally turned his gaze to Yunyu, and then slowly retracted his gaze. Not long after, I saw a nanny leading the maid and into the wing room holding brother Ju. Yunyu looked at brother Ju who was being carefully served by the court lady and eunuch, and lowered his head expressionlessly. After a while, Kangxi issued a decree for the elder brothers to have a banquet. Except for the 6th elder brother who was seriously ill, all the other elder brothers were there. Yunyu followed the 5th elder brother Yinkai without saying a word, and then joined all the elder brothers' greetings to Kangxi and the Empress Dowager. The Empress Dowager gave a few words to the elder brothers, each of them rewarded some gadgets and said nothing more. Kangxi asked the elder brothers to get up and ask about their daily life one by one. Zioki, I heard that you have recently started to learn how to read, which is very good. Kangxi smiled. Who taught you all this? General eunuchs in the palace are not allowed to read and write. When Yunyu heard Kangxi's question, he was startled. Is Kangxi testing himself? He quickly came to his senses, with a shy smile on his face. Huang Ama also knows that my son is practicing calligraphy. A child should be happy and uneasy when he hears that his respected father knows that he is diligent and studious. I met the prince's elder brother, third elder brother, and fourth elder brother in the garden that day. Urchin went to Tong and Iong's for some snacks. The prince's elder brother had to go back to study after eating. So Urchin was curious and pestered the four elder brothers. Brother taught me how to read. After speaking, his fingers seemed to unconsciously grab a purse hanging on his body. I can write a lot of words. After Kangxi listened, he nodded to the crown prince sitting under him, very relieved. It's good to know how to take care of the younger brother, and not forgetting to study in his spare time. After speaking, he nodded to the fourth elder brother. The fourth elder brother is young. I knew it was good to take care of my younger brother. After speaking, he rewarded the two of them again, and then he tilted his head to tease Yunyu. Then Zioki, tell me, what words do you know how to write? Yunyu looked at Kangxi, blinking his white eyes. Many, Tong Erniang, Da Erniang, and the fourth brother all said that I am very smart. Oh! Hearing the child showing off like this, the smile on the corner of Kangxi's mouth became more obvious, and he asked the beside him to move a small table with paper and pens on it. Then you write a few words for Huang Ama. If the writing is good, how about Huang Ama rewarding you and the fourth elder brother with a set of calligraphy? Yunyu buried his head in thought for a while, and asked a little embarrassedly, if the writing is good, we can also reward Tong Erniang for his virtue. Erniang and Erniang's elder brother and third elder brother. Kangxi lowered his eyelids slightly, and quickly asked with a smile, your fourth brother taught you how to read, why should you reward other people? Yunyu puffed up his face, do you have to say it? Kangxi nodded, don't you want me to reward them? Yunyu seemed to accept his fate, and said with his fingers, Tong Erniang gave Urchin a lot of delicious snacks, and she was very good to Urchin. And Da Erniang also gave Urchin delicious snacks, and returned them to my son. Urchin has embroidered purses, which are very pretty. After speaking, he showed off the two purses hanging from his waist. One is given by Da Erniang, and the other is made by Erniang for me. The surrounding concubines laughed softly when they heard this, and some praised Yunyu for their filial piety. Tong Jia's face also showed a smile, and even the concubine Dai, who was in a bad mood because of the sixth elder brother's illness, also showed a hint of a shallow smile. The Empress Dowager was also amused when she heard it, and beckoned Yunyu to come forward, glanced at the two little purses, and nodded with a smile. Well, they are beautiful, and they are all handy. Suma, go to the AI family's house and put the 3 bolts of silk and satin I got were given to the 3 empresses, and when they were free, I asked them to embroider 2 purses for AI's family. AI's family is getting old and their eyesight is not good, so why don't they just hope for some loving people to help AI's family? Are you at home? After finishing speaking, he stretched out his hand to pinch Yunyu's white and tender face. You child remembers the goodness of the girls, and is a filial one. Kangxi narrowed his eyes and saw 2 purses with a white and fat rabbit embroidered on one and a puppy embroidered on the other. They were just things that children like, but seeing Yunyu showing off, he was in a good mood. It's getting better and better. Several concubines who were rewarded hurriedly said they didn't dare, stood up and saluted to thank them, and then sat down under the envious gazes of all the concubines. Yunyu just smiled foolishly, and let the Empress Dowager pinch her cheeks. After the Empress Dowager retracted her hand, she took off the purse embroidered with the little white rabbit and put it in the Empress Dowager's palm. Yunyu heard the 4th brother tell a story. The story says that the little white rabbit is the pet of Fairy Chang'e, and the Empress Dowager is so beautiful, then Yunyu will give you the little white rabbit. After finishing speaking, he looked at the chubby little rabbit reluctantly. Although the Empress Dowager was the most honorable woman in the Qing dynasty, she was naturally happy when a child who was only 3 years old said she was beautiful, so she put Yunyu in her arms and rubbed her. Most 3-year-old children like to hide their favorite things. Yunyu is a child. Hearing that she likes purses, he gave her his own. The Empress Dowager loved it, so she asked Sima to reward Yunyu with a lot of things that children like, obviously in a good mood. Seeing that the Empress Dowager was happy, Kangxi became more friendly towards Yunyu, and after Yunyu stepped back from the Empress Dowager, he asked, "Then why do you want me to reward the Crown Prince and the third elder brother?" Yunyu said very seriously, "The first time I saw Tong Niang was the elder brother of the prince who took me there, and the third brother gave me a purse with delicious candies in it. I see that you like the candy in the purse of the third child, I understand, Zioki, you are a greedy little pig," Kangxi said with a loud smile. "Well, if you write well today, the emperor let AMA reward you together." Xie Huang AMA, Yunyu leaned over the small table, dipped a brush in ink, and wrote it down stroke by stroke. Everyone present was curious about how many words a 3-year-old child could write. When he took Kangxi to get the words written by Yunyu, he suddenly laughed, and saw the 5 characters Huang Ama Wanfu written crookedly on the paper. To the beside him, "Go, show everyone what Xiaoqi wrote." After a while, the concubines laughed at the banquet, making the children under the throne blush from face to neck. Tong Jiashi took the paper from concubine Yi, seeing the crooked characters with missing strokes and few strokes, she couldn't help covering the corners of her mouth with a handkerchief and laughing, "My child, how could this be written? Look, it's clearly the kitten's scribbling." Concubine Yi has a bright temper, and she smiled when she heard the words, "Sister, don't make fun of me, my sister looks good," and the 3 characters of Huang Ama are quite neatly written. It seems that 7th brother must practice these 3 characters often. After speaking, he himself laughed too. The handwriting was passed around and returned to Kangxi. Kangxi asked the to put away the handwriting. "Okay, Zioki can indeed write, but I'm afraid I have to practice this handwriting. Yinsen, in the future you have to treat this younger brother be stricter." After speaking, he rewarded those people Yunyu just mentioned. After Yunyu took his seat, he could still hear the laughter of the concubines. He sat on the side with a blushing face, but secretly sighed in his heart that this move was dangerous. Writing words like that is nothing more than making people think that they are young and ignorant. If they really write neatly, even if they are not destined to be a great treasure, they will become a thorn in their eyes. The people in the palace died early because of early wisdom. He flattered Tong Jiashi because of Kangxi's respect and love for Tong Jiashi, and the concubine must not be ignored. How can such a skill be underestimated? What's more, she will be the lord of the Yanghe Palace in the future, and the concubine Cheng is still living in the wing of the Yanghe Palace. The crown prince should not be offended. Now in the eyes of Kangxi, the crown prince is his smartest son. He will not be so stupid as to say that the crown prince is not good. This is not only harming himself, but also harming the 4th elder brother. After Yunyu retired, Kangxi praised the 3rd elder brother and 5th elder brother several times, and asked the 3rd elder brother to compose a poem and bestowed many things before letting the 3rd elder brother retire. Everyone's attention was on the 3rd elder brother. No matter how funny the 7th elder brother with a disability is, he can't compare to the 3rd elder brother who ranks high. Yinzhen, who was sitting on the table, looked at Yunyu and saw Yunyu smirking at him, so he lowered his head and thought, handwriting is so ugly and he still shows it to make others laugh. He's stupid and embarrassing. On the second day, Yinzhen really came to Yunyu with a kaleidoscope and a box of chess. When he came to find Yunyu, Yunyu was standing by the Huanghuali wooden table practicing calligraphy, with a serious expression on his face. Yinzhen guessed that he practiced calligraphy out of anger because he was teased by everyone in Qianqing Palace last night, so he walked to the small table and said, 7th brother, do you have any experience? Brother, When did you come? Why didn't the servants below report to you? Yunyu put down the pen in his hand, and glanced at the little standing at the door. I saw that you practice calligraphy seriously, so I didn't call the servant to report. Yinzhen sat down on a chair beside him, and soon a court lady served him tea. Asking the maid to call for water to wash her hands, Yunyu asked happily, "Brother, what did you bring me? I see you are thinking about the gadgets in my hand, you are missing me." Yinzhen took a sip of tea, suddenly felt that it was not as good as Zongqi Palace, so he put down the teacup, took out the kaleidoscope and chess box and put them on the table. On the small table, she turned her face slightly, as if she didn't want to pay attention to Yunyu. Seeing Yinzhen like this, Yunyu immediately felt that the child in front of him was so cute that it made one's heart tremble, and quickly grabbed Yinzhen's sleeve. "I like brother too." "Hey!" Yinzhen tilted his head. "I like my brother the most," twisting her body, and laying on Yinzhen's body. "I like my brother the most, I like my brother the most." The limp body twisted around like twists and turns. Yinzhen looked terrified, afraid he fell to the ground and hugged Xiaodao Bao with great difficulty. "You are awkward, I will see how you have the nerve to wipe your tears when you fall to the ground later." Yinzhen was originally teasing Yunyu. Seeing him act coquettishly, he smiled helplessly and said, "Okay, okay, I understand, stand up quickly." After a while, seeing the child put the white jade chess pieces into the purse hanging on his body, Yinzhen was amused and angry, and finally had to give the chess pieces to Yunyu, and finally promised to let the little take the chessboard tomorrow. Also sent over. As a prince, he is always jealous of other brothers thinking about his own things, but for Yunyu, Yinzhen is willing to give it. In his concept, Yunyu is his own person, and there is no need to share his own things with him. What can't be done? The time of childhood sweethearts always goes by quickly, and soon it was the autumn of the 26th year of Kangxi. Yunyu got the order of Kangxi, and went to Wuizhi to study with several other brothers, and there was someone who entered Wuizhi at the same time as him. The 8th elder brother Yinhu, who was several months younger. In the past 2 years, the 8th elder brother has gradually attracted the attention of Kangxi. It is not a violation of the system to enter Wuizhi when he is only a few months away from the age of 6, so no one objects. In this way, compared to the 8th elder brother who entered Wuizhi earlier, the 7th elder brother who also entered the school received less attention. It's just that before entering school, Kangxi rewarded him with a set of calligraphy, and asked Wei Zhu, who was quite trusted by his side, to pick out haha beads for him, and encouraged him to work hard and conscientiously. He will not treat him coldly, but he will not be too gracious. Kangxi's attitude towards Yunyu makes Yunyu unable to see through. He thinks that maybe if he lives 2 more lives, he will not be able to see through the thoughts of this eternal emperor. On the second day at yin time, there were eunuchs and maids waiting for Yunyu to get up. Looking at the sky without a ray of light, Yunyu suddenly felt sad that he was reborn as a royal. After washing up, I managed to eat some snacks, drank a bowl of wensi tofu soup, and then went to Wuizhi with haha beads who were already waiting outside. What he didn't understand was that Wuizhi was in Changchun Garden, which should be the place where the prince studied. He remembered that it was recorded in history that the 13th and 14th years were studied in Mokin Hall, and there were some younger ones. Brother used to study and write in Zhaoxiang's place. Is it because his age is not too different from the older brothers, so he just dropped by? Yunyu didn't bother to pay attention to these little things, so he rushed to Wuizhi. When he arrived at Wuizhi, he found that his elder brothers had already arrived, even the 8th elder brother who was younger than him, but he the last to come. I thought Zioki would be late, but look, he came before the master. The prince was already 13 years old, his face had already grown, and he only smiled coquettishly. Seeing the panting Yunyu, with a gentle smile on his face, he played up his elder brother's gentle demeanor. When Yunyu heard this, his face was a little helpless and a little coquettish. Brother Prince, the 7th younger brother dare not be so late tomorrow, so stop making fun of me. Seeing his reckless appearance, the crown prince smiled again. He had a good impression of the seventh younger brother whose mother's family didn't have much influence, so he treated him kindly, and made fun of him and said, "I know you love to pester you. Brother, second brother, I will decide to give you the seat next to fourth brother, and you can tell me how to thank second brother." Yunyu understood in his heart that now that Yunzhen and the prince are getting closer, and that he has a good relationship with Yunzhen, it means that he belongs to the prince's family. The prince naturally wished for this, so he arranged to sit with Yunzhen. If you don't pay attention to the twists and turns, it is really unexpected that these half-grown children are really not easy. Yunyu thought about it in his heart, but his face was full of embarrassment. I must have all the princes and elder brothers, so what should I do? This is just a child's embarrassment, but it sounds very comfortable to the prince, which shows that his prince's status is different from other elder brothers. They have what they have, but they don't have what they have. Must have. Forget it, second brother was just joking with you, Prince Yinreng said with the same smile on his face. How about you give the gift generously on second brother's birthday? Brother prince is so stingy, he clearly said it's fine, but he wants me to give you a big gift. Yunyu snorted, on brother prince's birthday, my brother will give you a penny. Seventh brother, you are becoming more and more rude. Yunzhen is 9 years old this year, and is much taller than Yunyu. Hearing Yunyu's words, he was afraid that he would anger the prince, so he hurriedly scolded, you don't respect the rules of respecting elder brothers. Where did you forget? Okay, fourth brother, the prince smiled and stepped forward to touch Yunyu's half-bald head. Seventh brother, isn't he acting like a spoiled elder brother to us? Send it off, the elder brother loves him too. Fourth brother, don't be too strict. After speaking, he stretched out his hand and tugged Yunyu's face before returning to his seat. Yunzhen heaved a sigh of relief when he heard the words, and confessed to the prince again, then pulled Yunyu to sit down next to him, wrote a few words for Yunyu to copy, and began to review what he learned yesterday. However, Yunyu knew in his heart that his behavior would only make the prince relax his vigilance towards him. The prince who acted like a baby to the prince could be called innocent and cute at best, but lacking in heart at worst. I am afraid that what Yunzhen did just now there is also the meaning of showing loyalty to the prince and at the same time protecting himself, but only Yunzhen knows whether it is true to protect himself, and whether he is really loyal to the prince. The eighth elder brother was not close to the prince, and the prince also looked down on the eighth elder brother's background, so in the whole study, no one was at the table with him, and he didn't care. Brother, lower your head slowly. At Mishi, the Manchu master, the Han Wen master, and Xiao Zhan arrived at Wuizai on time. Yunyu saw that these masters saluted the prince first, then the princes, and finally stood aside. Yunyu was a little surprised, but seeing that Yunzhen didn't move, he sat obediently, and then saw the old Chinese master Tang Bin standing in front of each prince's case to randomly check the prince's study situation yesterday, and before the prince's case, unexpectedly it is to kneel down and listen to the prince's recitation. Yunyu felt that his cognition was a bit subverted. When Tang Bin, who was in his 50s, returned the scriptures and trembled slightly when he stood up, his hand holding the brush became heavier. After a while, Tang Bin began to talk about the Book of Rites, and Yunyu half understood it, and then felt that the books he had read for more than 10 years in his previous life were wasted, and what's the use of putting them here? Not to mention other things, even many doctoral students may not be able to recite the 4 books, but the princes of the Qing dynasty may be able to recite the 4 books within 2 years of studying. Tang Bin didn't ask the 2 elder brothers who just arrived to learn Book of Rites too, but each posted a copy book and said, "My elder brothers, if there is anything you don't understand, please ask me." Yunyu took the copybook, which was in italics for beginners. He smiled, "Thank you, Master Tang." Tang Bin hurriedly saluted after hearing the words, "I don't dare." In the morning, I spent the boring study of Chinese literature and Manchu. At noon, all the elder brothers went to the side room, and the guards quickly delivered the food. Yunyu tasted the food, and the taste was very good. Those who wanted to come to the imperial dining room dared not come. The princes are careless about their food. The prince's food is particular about the combination of thickness and thickness. Yunyu picked out a white steamed goose baby with chopsticks. It tasted very good, but the dish was too small, and he disappeared after a few chopsticks. He licked the corner of his lips regretfully. You can't eat it in Nanzan Institute. At this moment, a palm moved over, the empty bowl disappeared, and then a plate of steamed white goose that had hardly been touched appeared in front of him. Yunyu froze for a moment, turned his head to look, and saw that Yunzan was burying his head in eating, but there was an empty bowl in front of him. His heart moved slightly, he picked up a chopsticks of white steamed goose palm and ate it into his mouth. Suddenly there was something to say. I can't tell the taste. A big man let a child who is more than 9 years old to eat. Is there anything more embarrassing than this? The 8th elder brother retracted his hand on the edge of the bowl. He glanced at Yunyu who was sitting on his left, and silently bowed his head to eat. After eating and resting for a while, the other princes began to read the Book of Rites again, while Yunyu and Yunhu continued to practice calligraphy. After practicing for about an hour and having some snacks, he began to practice riding and shooting in the big yard outside Wuizai. He said it was a yard, but Yunyu felt that this yard was bigger than his football field in college. Some sigh, is this the difference before and after the land price increase? If there is such a large vacant lot in a first-tier city in the 21st century, it's no wonder those real estate developers are not happy. Several other older brothers went to practice riding and shooting. Yunyu and Yunhu were relatively young, so they had special masters who taught them some of the most basic fighting skills, and then let the two brothers practice freely. After practicing for half an hour, Yunyu was so tired that he was out of breath. He looked enviously at the handsome 4th elder brother on the horseback, took a sip of the tea handed by the next to him, and saw that Yunhu was sweating from practicing, but he still didn't feel tired. Stopped, couldn't help but said, 8th brother, let's take a break first, haste makes waste. The 8th elder brother was stunned for a while, but stopped according to his words, and smiled at Yunyu. Yunyu asked the next to him to hand him a semi-dry towel to wipe his sweat, then drank another big mouthful of water, looked in the direction of the prince and others, and said yearningly, I will be as powerful as my brothers in the future, and then I will be a majestic man. General! General! Yunhu had heard about Yunyu's foot disease. Such a person was destined not to be able to fight a group of enemies on the battlefield, but seeing the yearning look on the opponent's face, he naturally could only listen obediently. Well, great general, Yunyu said with a bright smile on his face, wearing armor, protecting us Qing dynasty, how majestic. Yunyu's smile is very bright, but there is no smile in his eyes. He knows that his unintentional words as a child will soon reach the ears of different people. Isn't it funny and pitiful for a brother who has good wishes but is born with flaws? In the imperial study room, Wei Zhu stood aside, endured the drowsiness that was floating on his face, moved his neck slightly, glanced at the emperor sitting in front of the desk, and lowered his head to look at his toes. Wei Zhu, what time is it? Kangxi put down the imperial pen, closed the folder in his hand, leaned on the back of the chair and gently rubbed his forehead, but couldn't hide his tiredness. Back to the emperor, it's already high shi. Wei Zhu took 2 steps slightly closer, and stopped a few steps away from the case. Is the emperor going to bed? Kangxi's eyes darkened slightly. Concubine Xiancheng will serve you tonight. Wei Zhu slapped 1,000 times, hey! After exiting the door, he changed his expression slightly. The emperor went to Wuizai today but did not show up, probably because he heard the words of the 7th elder brother. Concubine Cheng hasn't been to bed for nearly a month, and I'm afraid that tonight is blessed by this 7th elder brother. 7th elder brother can be considered smart, but unfortunately. He looked into the yard. The trees, flowers, and plants looked very hideous in the night. Wei Zhu suddenly woke up and thought too much. He retracted his mind, and ordered the waiting in the side hall to pass the decree. Since going to Weizai on the first day later than other elder brothers, Yunyu's arrival time every morning is not too early or late among several elder brothers. After a month, he is used to getting up at 3 o'clock every morning, the habit of going to bed before 8 o'clock every night. I don't know if it's his illusion, after such a toss, he actually feels that his body is much stronger. There is a saying that still makes sense, that is, early to bed and early to rise is good for health. It was near the end of October, the weather was gradually cooling down, and the fourth prince's birthday was approaching, and the masters of the palaces sent servants to give gifts. Yunyu was walking on the Qingxi road, the wind was blowing and his fingertips were a little cool. Beijing still counts days according to the traditional lunar calendar, and there is no Gregorian calendar. Here, those festivals are all gone. Master, but it's a little cold. Seeing Yunyu's appearance, Fuduo secretly blamed himself for negligence. I'm going back to get the cloak for my master. No need, Yunyu glanced at the sky, it's getting late, the wind in Weizai is not strong, besides, the master is not so delicate. After finishing speaking, he didn't stop for a moment, and walked straight to Changchun Garden. As soon as he entered Changchun Garden, he heard a call from behind, Brother 7. Yunyu paused. In this garden, there was only one person who could call him seventh brother. He turned around with a smile on his face. Eighth brother, good morning. The eighth elder brother Yunhu smiled slightly, and walked quickly to Yunyu, half a step behind Yunyu. Seventh brother came one step ahead of younger brother, wouldn't it be earlier? Yunyu smiled when he heard the words, but he was secretly shocked. Eighth elder brother has such a demeanor when he smiles at the age of 6. I don't know what he will look like 10 years later. No wonder some girls in later generations said that he is like the moonlight, gentle and moist like jade. It's just a child of the palace, there is no one who is really as clean as the moonlight. He narrowed his eyes slightly, just in time to see the fifth elder brother who was not far in front of them. He quickened his pace, and caught up with the fifth elder brother Yunkai in a few steps. Brother, pay respects to the fifth elder brother. Old 7. Yunkai glanced at Yunyu, then at Yunhu, seventh brother, eighth brother. Greetings to fifth brother, Yunhu said to Yunkai, the smile on his face never diminished by half. They're all brothers of my own family, so there's no need to be so polite, perhaps because he wasn't raised by concubine Yi's side, but he doesn't have the temperament of Ernie Ang. Fifth elder brother is always polite and polite to everyone. The fifth elder brother brought his 2 younger brothers into Weizai, and there was arguing between the eldest elder brother and the crown prince, and the 3 of them paused, knowing that now is not a good time to go in, but they have already come here, no going in seems deliberate. Eldest elder brother has received a lot of favor recently, and the emperor pointed out Shangshu Kirkan's daughter to him, and she left the palace to build a mansion after a few years, so he is quite proud of his spring breeze, and his actions are inevitably a little crazy. Yunyu sighed inwardly, how could this elder brother forget, although he is the elder brother, but Yunfan is the crown prince, and he was taught by Huang elder brother himself. Even if Huang Ama loves him recently, he shouldn't be overjoyed. Angering the prince in vain made Huang Ama feel unhappy. After the 3 of them entered the door, they couldn't hear the noisy sound just now, and Yunyu just pretended that they didn't hear anything, and called thousands of times, Yunyu to the prince, brother, please be well. The elder brother sat aside and ignored it, but the prince waved his hands to the 3 younger brothers in a gracious manner. Brothers don't need to be so polite, let's all sit down. The 3 of them thanked each other and sat down in front of the case. Yunyu took the 4 books from Hahazuzi and read it deeply. When turning the pages of the book, his fingers felt a little stiff. Hearing that there was no sound in the whole study room, he felt a little emotional in his heart. He didn't expect the conflict between the crown prince and elder brother to arise so early. The hand on the knee was held by a warm palm. Yunyu tilted his head, and saw Yunzan's comforting eyes. Yunyu knew in his heart that Yunzan was comforting himself because he was worried that he would be frightened. He licked the corners of his mouth to Yunzan, indicating that he was fine. At noon, the elder brother confessed to the prince, but the prince hurriedly said that he did not dare to accept it. But Yunyu knew in his heart that the elder brother's move was for Kangxi's people to see, and the prince might not really bear grudges about it. He picks up a piece of duck strips with chopsticks and eats sea cucumbers with a blank expression. All of this has nothing to do with him. Anyway, in the end of the fight, both of them will lose. After eating, a group of elder brothers sat in the side room to digest food. Yunyu held a teacup and listened to the prince's allusions and legends in Shanhai Jing. His eyes were wide open, obviously very curious about the stories told by these ghosts and gods. Afterwards, when the crown prince talked about some academic issues, Yunyu also looked curious, but he just looked ignorant, obviously he didn't understand it very well. The prince had noticed Yunyu's expression a long time ago, and he secretly benefited from it, and he talked for a while before stopping. When he got to the study, he seemed to hear the seventh brother whispering to the fourth brother, "Fourth brother, brother prince is very powerful and knows a lot of things." The prince was overjoyed, sat down in front of his desk, and opened a handbook, which was densely written with his daily reading experience. He naturally knows a lot, otherwise Huang Ama would praise him for being smart, because he is the prince, so he must be smart. Perhaps because he was a Han Chinese in his previous life, Yunyu had a hard time learning Manchu. Every day after he left school at Weizai, he had to ask Yinzhen many questions about Manchu on the way. Today is a bit different. After Yinzhen and Yunyu left Weizai together, they looked a little hesitant, and only spoke after walking a certain distance. "Huang Ama allowed us to rest for an extra hour at noon tomorrow," Yinzhen said. "Oh," Yunyu nodded obediently. "Tomorrow Ernie Yang wants everyone to go to Zongqi Palace for dinner," Yinzhen said expectantly. "Will there be delicious snacks?" "Yes," the tone gradually became low. Yunyu was amused. How could he not know that tomorrow is Yinzhen's birthday? He even prepared the ceremony, but seeing Yinzhen's lost appearance, he suddenly felt that he was in a good mood. Is he really a strange uncle? Yinzhen looked at the child's unawareness, and said with some disappointment, "You don't have anything to say." Yunyu opened his eyes wide and asked in a daze, "What did you say?" Yinzhen looked at this lovely face, but secretly gritted his teeth. It turned out that he was treating a little witty-eyed wolf well. After walking for a certain distance, the two were about to part ways. Yinzhen took only 2 steps when his sleeve was suddenly clawed. He turned his head and looked at the hand that grabbed his sleeve with some resentment, only to see Yunyu's black and white eyes and a little soft-hearted. The seventh brother is so young, what can he know? Just when Yinzhen was in a daze, a lifelike statue of a jade puppy was stuffed into his hand. Yunyu smiled so hard that he couldn't see his teeth. "Fourth brother, this is a gift from me." After finishing speaking, he said, "I just want to joke with you, fourth brother, and I haven't forgotten my fourth brother's birthday." After speaking, he seemed to be afraid of Yinzhen's anger, and ran away quickly. Because of the disease on his feet, his back was a little wobbly when he ran. It looks kind of cute. Yinzhen looked at the jade dog that was warmed by Yunyu's hand. With a smile on his face, he recognized this jade dog. It was given to Xiao Qi by the Empress Dowager after the New Year's Eve banquet last year. Xiao Qi liked it so much, she treats it like a treasure on weekdays, but unexpectedly, she is willing to give it to herself. Tightly shaking the puppy in his hand, Yinzhen said to the little next to him, "Go and send the string of sandalwood beads and the jade pendant in my master's house to Xiao Qi. I remember Xiao Qi last time. I love those 2 little things." The buried his head and said, "Hey!" But he thought to himself, "Master, this puppy is just made of ordinary jade, and the jade pendant in your room is made of warm jade. The bauble in your mouth is gone." That night, Yunyu took the string of sandalwood beads and the warm jade, tossed and turned on the bed for more than an hour before falling asleep. When going to Zongqi Palace, Tong Jia's complexion was not very good. He heard that she just had a cold. Looking at this pale woman, Yunyu knew in her heart that this woman didn't have many days to live. After finishing his meal, he stood aside, Watching Tong Jiashi bent down to straighten Yinzhen's clothes, and hurriedly looked away to hide the emotion in his eyes. Regardless of whether Tong Jiashi's love for Yinzhen is out of sincerity or because she needs a son to be with her, there is no doubt that she is good to Yinzhen. Brother is really much better, and even his status in the palace is much higher than that of 8th elder brother. After leaving the Zongqi palace, the crown prince naturally walked first, and Yunyi walked silently among the brothers, and could not help but think about Yinzhen's future life. He looked up at the sun hanging in the sky. The glare of the sun made his eyes a little sour, and a hand stretched out to cover his eyes. "Don't look at it like that, it will hurt your eyes." Yunyi turned his head to look at the 9-year-old boy. There is still a long way to go before he becomes an emperor. When Tong Jiashi is gone, who will accompany him on the journey? Reaching out to hold Yinzhen's wrist, Yunyi smiled, "It's okay." Looking at Yunyi's smiling face, Yinzhen couldn't help but also curled the corners of his mouth. In the 27th year of Kangxi's reign, the eldest elder brother Yunyi left the palace to build a mansion, and the 14th elder brother was born in Yanghe Palace. The emperor was very pleased with him and gave him the name Yinzhen. In the autumn of the 27th year of Kangxi, the imperial concubine Tongjie was seriously ill. The emperor was very worried and ordered the imperial physician to treat her with all her heart. In the summer of the 28th year of Kangxi, Tongjie's condition became more and more serious. The emperor visited Zongqi Palace many times, and later pitied her for being seriously ill and moved her to Kunning Palace, but everyone in the harem knew that the imperial concubine was dying. Under the candlelight, Yunyi wrote a large Chinese character for longevity on the paper. Although it lacked a bit of character, it was still neat. He glanced at the word, sighed secretly, put down the pen, and threw the paper to Futuo in his hand, "Take it and burn it to the Lord." It is already June of the 28th year of Kangxi. If he remembers correctly, Mrs. Tongjie died on the 10th day of July in the 28th year of Kangxi, and now there is only 1 month left. Recently, Yinzhen was obviously a little absent-minded, and even lost his mind when Huang Ama came to Wuizai. Fortunately, Huang Ama respected him for his filial piety and did not blame him, but the current state is really disturbing. The 14th elder brother Debbie Loves was born last year, which also makes up for the trauma left by the 6th elder brother's death a few years ago. Sometimes when he went to the Yanghe Palace to pay his respects to Niang, he would see Debbie holding the 14th elder brother in his arms. If Tong Jiashi went, would the 4th elder brother's status in the palace be embarrassing? It was getting late, but he had a rare insomnia. He opened the sandalwood wood inlaid gold silk box next to it. Inside were jade pendants, opals, 9 chains of emeralds, and various rare things, many of which were Fora brother gave it to him. Take out a small Nanmua box from the box. When you open it, there is a string of sandalwood beads inside. You can smell the faint scent of sandalwood when you put it in your hand. Each bead is carved with a lifelike Buddha statue, which is really a rare treasure. It has been almost 8 years since he came here, and he has gradually gotten used to the life in the harem, and he has seen through the darkness and hypocrisy, but he has no choice but to be touched by how well Dai Jiashi treated him, and how sincerely the 4th elder brother Yinzhen treated him. Humans are not plants, so no one can be ruthless. He is an adult, but he is protected by a child, and now he has to feel sorry for the future of this child. Looking at the non-stop jumping candle flames, Yunyi sighed after a long time, then turned and entered the inner room. When Yinzhen entered the Kunning Palace, there was still a faint smell of medicine in the Kunning Palace. He lowered his voice and asked the maid next to Tong Jiashi, "Mingruo, how is Niang?" Seeing that it was the 4th elder brother, Ming Ruo was busy blessing his body, and his face was a little hesitant. "Master, I haven't eaten anything in the past 2 days, and even the medicine I drank has vomited a lot. Why didn't the 4th elder brother go to school today?" When Yinzhen heard Mingruo's words, his heart ached. The 9-year-old him couldn't help but feel his eyes heat up. He managed to suppress the emotions in his heart and asked, "Has Niang used medicine now?" But he didn't answer and didn't go. School things. Seeing that the fourth elder brother didn't answer, and the slave didn't dare to ask more questions, Ming Ruo nodded, "Master has already fallen asleep." Yinzhen heard the words and said, "Then go in and have a look, and ask the small kitchen to prepare porridge. If Erniang wakes up and wants to use it, you can bring it." After finishing speaking, he quietly entered the inner room. Tong Jiashi's room didn't smell much of medicine, but the doors and windows were closed tightly, and the room looked a bit stuffy. Remembering that the imperial physician had ordered not to catch the cold from the wind, Yinzhen carefully put down the curtain after entering the door, and then stood beside Tong Jiashi's bed. Certainly. Thinking of what Erniang said to him when she was sober a few days ago, he still felt a little uncomfortable. He never thought that Erniang who treated him so well was not his own mother, but his own mother who saw that he had never had any concubine had no expression. Even on her own birthday, concubine had not sent any troublesome gifts. After standing in the room for a long time, Yin Zhen walked out of the room, but his eyes were not used to it when he suddenly walked from a dark room to a bright place, and his eyes were sore. When Kangzi entered the door, he saw Yinzhen standing alone outside Tong Jia's door. His expression eased slightly, and he said, "Yinzhen, what are you doing standing here?" When Yinzhen heard Huang Ama's voice, he hurriedly walked up to Kangzi and saluted, "I send my regards to Huang Ama." Kangzi saw that he had lost a lot of weight in just a few months, and he didn't ask him why he didn't go to school today. He sighed and said, "Get up, you should pay more attention to your body. I haven't seen you for a few days, and I lost a lot of weight." Yinzhen stood up, the worry on his face could not be concealed. "My son made Huang Ama worry." Kangzi sighed when he heard the words. He knew that Tong Jiashi had taught this child well. Seeing that he treated Tong Jiashi with filial piety, he did not waste Tong Jiashi's heart. Thinking of this, Kangzi's tone became more gentle. "You don't have to go to Weizai today, go back and have a good rest, I'm going to see your mother." "Yes," Yinzhen saluted and retreated out. After leaving the yard, he felt his throat was a little dry. He returned to the yard where he lived, waved away the waiters, and leaned on the soft couch in a daze. After an unknown amount of time, the voice of Xiao Luzi, the serving beside him, came, "Master, seventh brother sent someone to bring you something." "Zioki?" Only then did Yinzhen regain some energy, got up and straightened his robe, and when he walked out the door, he saw Fuduo, the who usually followed Xiao Qi, and he sat down on top of him. "Fuduo, Xiao Qi asked you to send it to the master." "What's coming?" "My slave greets the fourth elder brother," Fuder said after paying his respects. "I don't know what these things are, but the master asked the slave to give them to you, the fourth elder brother." Yinzhen glanced at the basket in Fuduo's hand, nodded, "Take it here." After speaking, he asked the little beside him to give Fuduo some pastries before letting Fuduo leave. "Open the lid of the basket, there are 2 sweet apples on it, open the compartment, there is a plate of pastries that I usually eat, and a few sheets of paper are pressed under the plate." He took away the plate, opened the paper and looked, and the gloom in his heart dissipated a lot. On the first piece of paper, there was a picture of a chubby child holding a chicken leg, and beside it was written a sentence, "Do you want to eat?" A silent boy is drawn on the second letter. On the third piece of paper, the chubby boy was twisted on the body of the silent boy, with big tears still hanging on his face, and there was a sentence next to it, "If you don't eat, I will cry for you." Thinking of the serious children who study weekdays secretly lying on the desk and drawing villains, and bringing pastries and apples to him to save his jaw, Yinzhen couldn't help but bend the corners of his mouth, and picked up a piece from the plate. When the pastry is eaten in the mouth, it only feels fragrant on the lips and teeth. In the corridor outside Weizai, Yunyu knelt with his back straight. Because of the hot weather, his forehead was already wet with sweat, and his cheeks were flushed. When it was almost noon, several elder brothers came out, and seeing Yunyu still kneeling in the corridor, they all stopped. The crown prince walked up to him and patted his head. "Seventh brother, don't be so confused in the future, it's already noon, get up and go have dinner with second brother. After Prince Yunreng finished speaking, he saw that Yunyu just looked at him timidly with wide-eyed eyes, obviously not daring to get up. The prince sighed, Huang Ama told you to kneel until noon, now it's noon, Huang Ama won't blame you, but you can't be negligent in class in the future. Well, thank you, brother prince, Yunyu nodded obediently, stood up slowly, and staggered. If it wasn't for the support of and beside him, he might fall to the ground again. The prince sighed in his heart, the seventh younger brother was serious about his studies, why did he get so confused when Huang Ama came here today, and let Huang Ama find out that he was drawing little people while studying, no wonder Huang Ama wanted to punish. Let's withdraw. Kangzi put down his chopsticks, looked a little sleepy, and was served by the maid and to rinse his mouth. After washing his hands, he asked Wei Zhu, who had been standing by the side, seventh brother gave the messy painting to fourth brother. Wei Zhu didn't dare to look directly at the emperor's face, but just buried her head and said, if you go back to the emperor, yes. Kangzi got up and glanced at the scenery outside the house, did he really kneel until noon? Wei Zhu replied, going back to the emperor, I heard from the serving in Weizai that elder brother Qi knelt down until the crown prince had lunch with several elder brothers. My elder brother had lunch with several other elder brothers. Kangzi nodded, well, it's very good for the prince to do so. Wei Zhu remained silent, and he also knew that the emperor did not speak for him. There was silence in the room, and after a long time, Kangzi asked again, has Si elder brother eaten today? Go back to the emperor, the fourth elder brother used it today. After Kangzi listened to Wei Zhu's words, he squinted and looked out the window, and stopped talking. After another period of silence, he waved his hands and said, you step back. Your servant will leave. Wei Zhu withdrew from the door and waited quietly outside. He looked up at the sky, the sun is really dazzling today. The afternoon riding and archery class was not cancelled because of the hot weather. The feeling of standing under the scorching sun was really uncomfortable. While practicing how to draw the bow, Yunyu secretly glanced at the brothers on the horseback, retracted his eyes and continued to draw the bow with great difficulty. Now Yunyu can't fully draw the bow, but he can still look decent. Fortunately, he is not a prince who is valued, so the master who teaches riding and shooting is not too harsh on him. It's just that he himself didn't dare to be lazy, because he was an elder brother, the prince of the Qing dynasty, and the son of Kangzi of the Qing dynasty. In less than 2 sticks of incense, Yunyu's eyes were already dripping with sweat, which made him feel uncomfortable. He squinted his eyes, took an arrow from Hahazuzi, aimed at the nearest target, drew the bow to aim and let go, right in the heart, very good. Yunyu put down his bow, heaved a sigh of relief, rubbed his knees, frowned and thought, maybe this place has been bruised, any 8-year-old child with delicate skin and tender flesh would kneel for nearly 2 years in a standard kneeling position. Even the knees can't stand it. Ordinary children are punished to kneel and dare to be lazy occasionally, but he dare not move even when he is kneeling. At this time, he couldn't remember any health tips. Yunyu took a cup of half-warm tea from the at the side, drank it a few sips, and felt better. After staying in Weizai for nearly 2 years, he has been able to get on and off the horse freely and run on horseback. Although he is not as handsome as the elder brother, the prince, and the fourth elder brother, he is not ugly. He tilted his head and glanced at eighth brother. His fair face was rosy after being exposed to the sun, but his eyes were full of seriousness. Then he heard a whoosh sound, and an arrow flew out, piercing straight into the red heart. Withdrawing his gaze, Yunyu wiped the sweat from his forehead with his hand, handed the bow and arrow back to the hand of Hahazuzi behind him, and said to the again, go and bring the master's horse. His horse was given to him by Kangzi on his 7th birthday, but it was only a foal at that time. This horse is not a rare breed. Kangzi gave it to him, and it also has a kind of coaxing children in it. Yunyu doesn't care about it. For him, there is a horse that can run and jump, and is not stubborn. That's enough. After the horse was brought, Yunyu turned on the horse, and the horse started to run as soon as his legs clamped the horse's belly. The running of the horse finally brought him a bit of coolness, but the sun was still shining on his head. Pain. Xiaoqi's riding skills are getting better and better. The prince saw Yunyu entered the racecourse, reined in the horse and slowed down, and walked side by side with Yunyu. Would you like to compare with the second brother? Don't. Yunyu glanced at the tall black horse under the crown prince. He saw that it was a good horse. He said with a sad face, competing with the prince's brother, needless to say, the seventh brother will lose. Slow down, my younger brother will definitely beat the prince's elder brother. The prince smiled, and changed the subject. Xiaoqi, you must never do what you did this morning in the future. As sons of Huang Ama, we all have high hopes. How can you do other things when you are in school? When Yunyu heard the words, he hurriedly confessed, Brother Prince, I know I was wrong, and my brother thought that my fourth brother was not here, and then I was lazy, so I just... The prince smiled, and there was no sign of reproach on his face. He just said, don't do this in the future. It seems that the seventh brother's hard work is also the reason for hindering the fourth brother. Such a brother is really useless, but good, it's not a hindrance, it's not too smart, and you don't need to spend too much time controlling it in the future. Thinking of this, the prince smiled at Yunyu. You learn slowly, the second brother will take a step first. Yes, Yunyu cupped his hands slightly on the horse's back, watched the prince leave gracefully, and started to run slowly in the racecourse again. After school, Yunyu led Hahazuzi and Futuo back to his residence, but the way he walked was more limping than before. Halfway there, he sent Hahazuzi away. Behind him, Futuo hesitated for a while and then said, Master, the fourth elder brother's people sent a message in the afternoon, hoping that you can go to the fourth elder brother's residence after school. Yunyu paused when he heard the words, did the fourth brother eat today? Futuo replied with lowered eyebrows, yes. That's good. Yunyu continued to walk in the direction of the number 3 institute, and after walking a few steps, he lowered his voice, you send someone to tell, just say. I'm too tired today, so I won't go there. By the way, I want to say something according to the master, tell the fourth elder brother to take good care of his health and eat meals on time. Futuo raised his eyebrows in surprise, but only saw his master's slightly thin back. He lowered his head, not daring to ask further, yes. There are all kinds of cakes on the table in Yinzhen's room, but what he waited for was not Yunyu, but a young eunuch. Where's your master? Yinzhen looked at the little who was kneeling on the ground paying him respects, with no expression on his face. Returning to the fourth elder brother, the master said that it is too late today, so he will not come here. He also asked the servant to transfer the message to hope that the fourth elder brother can rest well, remember to eat on time, and take care of yourself. The little thought of his master limping as soon as he came back, he couldn't help shaking, guessing that the master suffered a crime in Weizai, and he was just a slave, so how dare he say such things? Yinzhen looked coldly at the servant who didn't dare to raise his head. It's too late. Is that what your master said? The trembled slightly, responding to the fourth elder brother's words, yes. Go down. Yinzhen waved the little back, looked at the plates of exquisite cakes on the table, his face sank like water. After a while, he resumed his usual expression, and said to the outside, Xiao Luzi. The slave is here. Xiao Luzi entered the door and glanced at the pastries on the table, then hurriedly knelt in front of Yinzhen, Master. What happened in Weizai today? In summer, it gets dark late, and it's a good excuse for Yunyu to prevaricate him by saying that it's getting late. Xiao Luzi hesitated for a moment, and when he sensed that his master was unhappy, he said, this morning, seventh brother was found out by the emperor because he didn't pay attention in class, so he was punished. Xiaoqi was punished. Yinzhen's anger subsided a lot. What's going on? It's said that it's because I drew little people when Mr. Tang was giving lectures. Xiao Luzi thought for a while, and then said, Brother Chi was punished to kneel outside for 2 hours and didn't get up until noon. In the afternoon, he practiced riding with other princes. Shoot, Brother 7 has a leg problem, so. I heard from the people below that Brother 7's walking posture was very wrong along the way. There was news just now that Brother 7 had an ugly face, as if, it seemed, about to faint fall down. Yin Zhen stood up when he heard the words, Bastard, why didn't you tell the Lord about these things? The little passerby was so frightened that he kowtowed on the ground a few times before saying, The slave saw that Brother Chi wanted to hide it from the master, and you were resting in the afternoon, and the elder Brother Chi didn't seem to have any serious problems, so the slave was confused for a while. I didn't tell the master about this, please forgive me, the slave is guilty. Yinzhen thought of the 3 pictures of cute villains in the morning, and he clenched his hands into fists. He knew that he couldn't go to Nanzan-san to see Yunyu at this time, so he would feel dissatisfied with Huang Ama's punishment of Xiao Qi. This will only bring trouble to himself and Zioki. After taking a deep breath, he picked up the tea on the table and took a sip before suppressing his impulse. Send Zioki the ointment for promoting blood circulation and removing blood stasis in Grandpa's house, and you tell someone to wait outside Nanzan Institute. If there is anything wrong with Zioki, come back and report it immediately. Yes, Xiao Luzi heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that his master didn't intend to punish him, got up and backed out, and sighed secretly after going out. When Yunzu covered Yunyu's bruised knee with a hot veil, he gasped in pain, but he knew in his heart that if the blood was not rubbed away, he might not be able to go to the riding and shooting tomorrow afternoon. I don't know what it will be like in Kangxi's ears. Arrogant or unmotivated. Seeing that her master wrinkled her face in pain, Yunzu was very distressed. While fanning the heat for Yunyu, she changed the handkerchief. Master, bear with it, it will be fine soon. When the slaves in the room were busy, Xiao Luzi begged outside the door with several bottles of medicine. Yunyu put down his trousers, and let Xiao Luzi enter the room. Xiao Luzi glanced at Yunyu who was sitting on the soft couch, then at the steaming copper basin beside him, and said, 7th elder brother, these are some medicines that our master just got recently. The master told you to be prepared. It is easy to deal with minor injuries and pains when practicing riding and archery in the future. I'm sorry, 4th brother. Yunyu sat firmly on the soft couch, rewarded Xiao Luzi with something, and let him retreat. Xiao Luzi came out of Nanzan Institute, and thought helplessly, this 7th elder brother really thinks that the people in the harem have no eyes, and with such actions, they can hide it from their master? No wonder none of the other elder brothers in the palace paid him any attention. No one would pay more attention to an elder brother who had no power in the harem or even the most basic contacts. In this regard, the 8th elder brother is much better than the 7th elder brother, but the 8th elder brother is too popular, and I don't know what will happen to these elder brothers when they can receive errands. Suppressing his wild thoughts, Xiao Luzi wiped the sweat from his forehead with his sleeve, and hurriedly walked back. After seeing Yinzhen, he told his master everything he saw, including Yunyu's sight. He later covered up the move. After Xiao Luzi retreated, Yinzhen took out the 3 paintings from his bosom. Thinking of Tong Jiashi, Debbie, and Yunyu, he lightly pressed his finger on the head of the fat kid holding the chicken leg, with a gleam in his eyes. He picked up a piece of sweet-scented osmanthus rock sugar cake and took a bite. It was not particularly delicious, and even a little sweet. I really don't know how 7th brother would like this kind of cake. Tomorrow, I will ask the small kitchen to make some for him. I really don't know how delicious these things are. Before he knew it, Yin Zhen ate most of the slightly sweet and greasy pastry. In the middle of the night, Yunyu woke up from the middle of the night because of the pain in his leg. His left foot, which was originally sick, hurt like a heart. He gritted his teeth, sat up from the bed, and sat in the dark for a long time before uttering this sentence in the dark talk. Through your sister. The author has something to say. Note some children's shoes mentioned the name of the 7th elder brother. The name of the 7th elder brother is pronounced Yu. After a long time, I couldn't find it. I thought that the Sogu input method could not be typed, and I saw that many people on the internet used the word Wu instead, so I also used this word. But in the middle of the night last night, under the reminder of Ariki, I actually found this word after more than 10 pages of the Sogu input method == this means that I want to change my name, change them all, hahaha I'm crazy I'll change all the previous ones tomorrow, because I have something to be famous today, and tomorrow is March 1st, that's a good day ==